Hey, hey,
It is you.
it's me.
Impressive. I don't know why my phone doesn't ring. It's so weird. And then I never can grasp the 509 or whatever, like hidden numbers you come in with.
Oh, yeah.
But it's dangerous out there. You don't know who's who.
You don't. Absolutely. You never know who's who. I know. I get so much spam these days. So many spam texts and calls. People be like, "We met last week. Do you remember me?" And it's just a random. They're trying to bait you into responding so that they can verify that
Right.
it's a real number, and then they just send you junk.
Exactly, bro. That's kind of the idea of wanting to call you is like there's so much confusion and manipulation. And, so I thought, hey, how fun is it to talk about getting back to the basics, acknowledging our world situation.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we're sophisticated and intelligent enough to have a conversation.
I love it. Are you ready to go? I was a little late because I was just setting everything up, and
Oh, no worries.
I'm
I'm
already
ready whenever
recording
you
here.
are. Yeah, it's good to because you know how it is right away. The flow is on because it's these thoughts that get me to call you every once in a while. Hey, Steve, I think it's time for a little combo
Yeah.
to see where it goes.
I love it. I want to start by asking you what happens on your end when I get one of these messages out of the blue from you, because for people that are listening, I love it so much. I'll get these emails, and I think you're sending me a text from your iPhone, but for whatever reason, they still show up in my email. So I'll get an email, and this one just said, I haven't talked to you in probably a year, maybe more. It's been a while. And I just get this email out of the blue from Ron Kauk. It says, "Can we do a podcast for a call to action for future generations?" And there's this beautiful photo of Yosemite attached to it. And immediately I'm like, yes. And then, and then I'm like, where did that come from? What, are you just on a walk and an idea hits you and you just stream of conscious, just shoot it over to me? Or is this something that's been brewing for a while that you've been thinking about? And it kind of finally crossed some threshold where you're like, you know what, this is important. We need to have a chat about this. But yeah, tell me about that. Like, what happens on your end when I get one of these texts from you?
Everything you just described.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in a way, it's an interesting realm that I feel that I live in, you might say, is a timeless. So you could tell me it was a year or last week, in a way of saying, in our friendship, whoever you and I are,
Yeah.
in back to this potential stream of consciousness, or what does it mean, to even be in this world? So I'm just intrigued by it. I'm just a guy who's curious, and so you're hitting it. That picture I sent to you, I just happened to. Well, I got myself a new pony, right? I got this little motorcycle. I had a Honda 250 for like 31 years, so I thought, I think it's time just to take a little step up so I can have this. My daughter lives on the east side of Sierra, and we have this little RV, and I can put it on the back, and it's easier to ride over the Sierra, back and forth. And so it's just a funny little caveat to the story where I get on my motorcycle and I'm just breaking it in, and it's just such a joy to ride. And so I rode up to the top of where we walked down to the rostrum just to go look around, in the evening. So as I'm walking around, I always have this iPhone. Obviously, we all do. But the benefit of this iPhone to me is the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was walking down, I just had this feeling that I get sometimes with Yosemite in these, I don't know, that type of lighting in the afternoon, the breeze, the sound of Cascade Falls below just coming through the wind. And you're so moved in a soulful way. And you think, wow, this is all connected to that midnight lightning bolt hold, to Camp 4, to El Capitan, to meeting people from all over the world, recognizing climbing as a way of life that we can advance ourselves as human beings. So I wouldn't be saying all that stuff to myself. It's just a feeling that's in the wind. And then I look down at those flowers and I go, oh man, look at that. And then I got straight down on my stomach and I was trying to position that iPhone. And it's really fun. because it's all this intimate relationship with the place in the, how do they say, macro, micro, the biggest sky you have over your head down to that little colorful flower. And so I'm getting it, and I get the picture, and so there's something about the point of connection as a human being, our connection. And so when you just described before we were recording, I guess we're recording now, that how you get these spam emails and people trying to trick us into, and I just had that happen to me as well. And I was checking out these little things, and then all of a sudden they're sending them to me. I go, no, I didn't even want to order this. What's going on? And I think, wow, what a manipulation we're living in of desperateness. So all this accumulated into the idea of like, yeah, I'd like to have a conversation with Steve, because here's one of the reasons I care so much, and I'm so unbelievably thankful to have shaped a life that has built a foundation through rock climbing that got roots deep enough that I could say it's a spiritual foundation. But the fortunate opportunity in your youth to have the freedom to move through Yosemite Valley after Yvonne Chouinard and Royal Robbins and Chuck Pratt and T.M. Herbert, the list goes on of these amazing characters that were just really good examples for us to go to our next step. And so it's a way of life, right? So you want to, this next generation, have the opportunity to recognize what it means to get back to the basics, which ultimately means, what does it mean to be a human being? Because we can't escape that fact, but things have worked so hard on us to separate us, to keep confusion, to promote competition, to promote capitalism and industrialization. And now the realm of artificial intelligence coming in. So we're being thrashed and attacked. And I don't mean to sound, I hope it don't sound dramatic. It's just a rock climber's mentality to say, I'm willing to look at reality so I can find a solution through this impossible looking task, like to be human in the 21st century, where we're living in such contamination. The climate is collapsing. And if anybody doesn't think that's happening, they're not paying attention enough. So again, it's not to paint doomsday. It's actually to present a day that we need to wake up a little bit more and really delve into the beauty. So I'm a guy up here that gets to wander along the top of the rostrum area and run into these flowers and think, what an incredibly beautiful place that has inspired me to be this place in the beauty of myself. And I think, well, I don't want to keep that to myself. You kind of want everybody to know how beautiful we are in relationship to nature, because we are nature. And I've spent the last 15 years with Sacred Rock bringing kids into nature, like we did yesterday, walking up to the top of Yosemite Falls to find your own connection. So the beauty of rock climbing is we have the opportunity to find our own authentic connection, because like we say, it's only your hands and feet that can get you up that rock. And that's symbolic, bro. So the symbolic lessons are absolutely phenomenal if we can stay tuned into our history as human beings, but even in our rock climbing world, right? Because things have moved way too fast. And so that's what I'm seeing. Like, things are moving too fast. But so that was a long answer to your simple question. Like, you just have a stream of consciousness. Well, actually, yeah, like the river.
We've tapped into it. We're flowing.
Yes. We're in the flow now.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I have this kind of recent fascination, which is noticing that like humans, most of us have truly forgotten that we're animals. Like, we're so disconnected from remembering that we're animals. And I think we're very unique and special as animals. I mean, we're not, I don't want to say special as in we're higher or more valuable than any other animal, but we're certainly uniquely one of a kind. And our creativity and our desire for industry and to create things and make things and build things, I see that as a really beautiful part of being a human. And I don't hate capitalism, because, I'm sitting here using this fancy recorder and talking to you over my iPhone, and I'm able to share it with a bunch of people because of the internet and because everyone has their own iPhone, in their pocket or smartphone or whatever. And I don't hate all of that, but it certainly is such a double-edged sword. And I always love talking to you, because it's just always, it just immediately comes through that Ron's out there living in Yosemite. And I feel like every time I connect with you, I'm just brought back to this kind of slower, more patient, more observant, version of being an animal for the time that we're talking, and then several days after, I always get this like, oh yeah, flowers. It's
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. But yeah, I have noticed. I mean, I think I've kind of become a lot more fascinated by returning to more of this idea of like being mindful all the time that I'm an animal. And I don't know why, but that feels really helpful to me. Like one of the ways in which that's really helpful for me is I get caught up in the productivity and getting things done, in making things, and it can almost become like an addiction. And I look around at other animals, wild animals especially, and how they operate, or even pets. Like I have some renters here at my house, and they have a dog, and the dog just lays in the front yard and just
Yeah.
enjoys being a dog. That's how it spends 90% of its life, just laying in the front yard. And I see that, and I'm like, oh, it kind of gives me permission to just be.
Oh,
and to kind of set all of the productivity aside and remember that like it's okay to simply eat good food and sit in a comfortable position in the sun and just enjoy being.
that's right. You just really, it was all really nice what you just said, because it isn't about hating anything. And so back to the animal, we're animals, but sometimes, as like I say, especially when I'm working within the native community, and like I say, you don't have to be native to be native. You got to be a human being to be native. And we're all indigenous to this earth and so forth and so on in our history. But we got uprooted, and so we never have reorientated ourselves. So I think back to rock climbing is a way to reorientate yourself to life. And it's such a cool thing, because I was having a conversation with a friend saying, or an elder the other day, actually. I said, it's a funny thing about us humans that we're the only ones that kind of get lost and we're not sure what to do sometimes. But you look at all the animals, they know what to do. So in our history, seems to me that we had to follow the instructions of nature by being observant about nature, the animal life, the plant life. And somehow us humans, with our consciousness to try to figure out how to survive, we learn from everything around us, which you could consider natural laws. And this is the thing that really needs to come back into our psyche, is about what is a natural law? What is it? To keep the air clean, to keep the water clean, to keep the food clean. Because this is what I'm saying. We're living in a lot of contamination across the board. And to use our intelligence intelligently, we need to look at nature and the intelligence of nature to rejuvenate itself through spring, summer, autumn, winter. And we need to understand that within ourselves. Like, how do we rejuvenate ourselves on a daily basis? We eat food, we drink water. So it's really interesting in this modern thing, like you said, we feel like we have to produce more, and that's because we've been industrialized. So what we're trying to say is anything in excess can be too much. To find balance, we almost need to be in the middle of how it can work, to not get too extreme in anything, if you will. And so sometimes I like to think for myself, man, what does it really mean to be truly relaxed? So your dog will teach you. And we could all laugh. And this is one of the things that I was saying about, I think I said another thing about being sincere. Like sincerity, it's such an important aspect of finding our ability to be really human, because it's so humbling to be a human. And when we do observe nature, the trees are very sincere. They do what they do, and they give us life, and we're interacting with them to stay in balance. So I find this so intriguing to think, okay, we need to understand about how to get back to the basics, to get the real value of things back in order, our health and well-being. So if we were to check ourselves about our health and well-being, and this is what's back to the symbolic realms of climbing, think about those hard red point projects you might have done, or a hard boulder problem. You're really getting an evaluation of yourself every time you go to that particular project or challenge, like, God dang, how am I feeling? Oh, I'm stressed out of my mind and I really want to do this. So what's happening? And then if we have a subconscious thing going on in our mind about a story that rock climbing is about competition, it's about whatever, and all that. And it's a fun part of it, but it's kind of like saying our iPhones are a fun part of it. But if it starts to corrupt us and that iPhone is running you and you're not running that iPhone, that's when the script has been flipped. and we're being led away from who we truly are in our ability to use our higher intelligence to make sense of what do I need and what I don't need. And that's back to what I always felt climbing El Cap was about. Not that we needed that tape deck with Jimi Hendrix and the Doors playing, but you take your food, your water, your shelter up there. So and you know what I was thinking to myself, I'm still living in Camp 4
Mm,
in my way of life. Like
right.
I live mostly outside. I got more conveniences than Camp 4, but I still have that vibe in my psyche. And I thought that was such a funny thing to put in my conscious about living right here in the entrance to Yosemite, Patel, and having this way of life. But this is the way of life that Chenard was saying that climbing could be a way of life. And Chuck Pratt, like we said, was saying climbing is like an outlaw sport. And I think, why is he saying that? But you pick up on these things over time and you think, well, it was also considered counterculture. Well, why is that? Because people were off to discover something, like almost a little vision quest. And I pick up on this. I hiked to the top of Yosemite Falls, like I said, with the kids yesterday. Then I met this kid and his girlfriend on the way down. Sometimes people look at me and I'm like, why are they looking at me like that? And then they go, oh, yeah, that's because I've been here climbing all year. And then later I ran to, he goes, are you Ron Kauk? I go, yeah. And he goes, oh, well, my dad climbed here way back in the 70s or 80s. And he doesn't talk much about it. I mean, he did El Capitan a couple times, but he doesn't really say too much about it. I go, I recognize that type of character back then. Really interesting people that were just here in that, maybe that soulful experience of the times to go do something like El Cap. Not that it's better than, it is now or worse, whatever. It's just a different era. And I thought, wow, that was so cool to hear and put my mind into that idea of like the different generations. And then you thought, well, there's something that we want to keep in connection to these generations. We've been trying, but I guess part of this call to the future generations is to try to become more conscious of who you are and what you're doing and why.
Hmm.
What is our purpose here? And the reason we need to understand that is because we have lost we're out of balance as human beings. So the reflection is outside of us in the natural world. It's completely out of balance. It's so serious. And I guess I would like to, I'm pretty informed in a way, and that's not to brag, but some harsh truths about our environment, and I take the time to look into different things and then connect the dots for myself. And I see that the ozone is getting thin. The sun is very hot. Our hills are turning brown faster, and so it's very interesting to think we're in this particular position in our history that the human influence has been so dramatic that it gives you pause and says, well, how do I fit into this? I'm a human being. I have intelligence. I have creativity. And this is what I think is so great, that we can have a conversation together as two people, and maybe 10 people will hear it, or maybe 10,000. And then we're all connecting. And this is what I think is so profound and powerful about being human. And that's what I like about being a Native community, because it's spiritual and it has a connection to a direct line of history with your ancestors. And one of the things I like to say, and maybe we could all understand this, all humans are our ancestors. That's just my feeling. I feel all human beings are connected. So when I say my ancestors, I could say from this land, I could say from Africa. That's just how I think, right? Because nature has shown me to that level, everything is connected. So back to our climbing, we have a certain sense of freedom in being in nature, that we could be out there climbing, and if there was a black person or Asian, or whatever it all is, we're all like, oh, you got it, man.
Mm-hmm.
There's a camaraderie. And so to build on that, I think would be an amazing possibility for the future generation to say, we're climbers for peace. We're climbers to be human. We're climbers that love nature. We're climbers that support nature. And I'm not saying that some of that isn't happening, but it could go to, everything needs to go to another level, not just physically in the climbing realm, but mentally and spiritually. Because I think that was the essence of our original guys, as far as being a Yosemite climber. It was about how you were affected by the beauty of this place, within the challenge to be a part of it through climbing big walls or little boulders or whatever you were doing. Yosemite demands respect because it's not the easiest place in the world to climb. And so there's a relationship that can be built on in what I feel is to be a Yosemite climber as an example. And then that Yosemite climber gets the techniques and skills to go anywhere in the world, like we did to Pakistan in 1979. And John Middendorf's writing some historical stuff, so he was talking to me about it. And it's really fun at this stage of life to reflect on the essence of your experiences, like say to go to the Trangos in Pakistan and think about, man, what a trip that you were so uh, primed up to go over there and do that and have a, I guess you could say successful summiting and walk out in that deserty landscape and just feel like you were totally part of it all. And that's back to, again, the essence of the human experience. I think when we arrive to a higher level mentally and spiritually is to feel that connection. What better feeling? And then we're talking about relationships across the board.
Mm. When you think about the future generations, so your initial message to me said that you wanted to do a call for action, a call to action for future generations. I think a lot of young people now are so overwhelmed by how far a lot of things have gone wrong that it's like I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I don't even know where to start. I mean, I have a platform, so I probably have a lot more leverage and things I can do to try to like course correct the ship, a little bit than most people. But I think most people feel totally helpless when they think about the environment and the direction it's going, or our air, our water, our food. Mm-hmm. And we can all make individual decisions, but I guess like what is most important for young people to think about? Like in your perspective, is the reconnection and reconnecting with yourself as a human being that is connected to earth and nature and all these larger things outside of ourselves, and that it is kind of all one? Like, is reconnecting with that the most important thing? Because then that leads to all of the, the shift in incentives and the shift in motivations and the change that needs to happen? Or how do you think about it? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's like the $1 billion question for the time we're in, because for one thing, it's by design that we get overwhelmed. We have been, this word colonization, it's kind of tricky, but it does have a reference throughout our history that if you think about in America, the colonizer came here and took away a way of life, which was an indigenous way of life. So all these years later, 500, whatever, we go through we've all been through a processing, a dehumanization, and a desensitization. So it's a really bad joke on us human beings when we lose our spiritual foundation and our roots. So it's really even in a way challenging to say spiritual, because that could trigger someone's mind to think, is that religion? Am I talking about churches? Pray? Are we talking about kneeling? And I'm like, no, and no, nothing against it all. But the thing is, what the next generation needs to come into is the reality that you have power in yourself to think clearly for yourself, to connect to the nature in your own way, and to get that relationship through the ability to commune with nature that's telling you everything you need to know about yourself. Because if you go back to our origins, that's how we learned as human beings. We had a connection to nature. Our languages were based on the understanding of connection. So it's okay. One of the things I would say right off the bat is just don't overthink. Start to feel. And the emotions do not lie. Intuition is one of our most powerful ways to, let's just say, think. Because your thoughts can run in every direction. That's why there's so much manipulation with these things you're talking about, these scam emails or whatever they're called, and all this information coming at us. And I, it's for me too. I'm like, wow, man, there's so much stuff going on, and it gets in your head, and then your head will run off in different directions. Because this is the thing about human intelligence. It's so powerful and profound that you could get guys that become billionaires and they're trying to get to Mars. What kind of thinking? I mean, what kind of thinking is that? Or they got all these satellites flying, or what is that? Which direction are we going with our mind? So the mind is leading us away from the reality of what it means to live on Earth. So we're like, whoa, the mind is a blessing and a curse if it's not in harmony with the rest of your ability to think, which is literally from your heart your intuition, called gut feeling. And I feel that all these things that can develop well through rock climbing. You know, if you're approaching it, see, that's what I'm saying. Only 50 years ago, we were approaching it somewhat to that extent. You know, not by plan. It was just kind of opened the door for us through the 60s revolution of time. It was trying to question your society and all that. But again, it's a sensitive thing. But it's something to reference in our own history. And now we're dealing with so much artificial intelligence, so much information that it could distract us and keep us kind of too mental, you know. And one of my elders one time, he said, you know, it's the intellect that's got us into this mess. And I'm like, well, but then you think, okay, if if okay, the thinking that got us into this confusion won't be the same thinking to get us out of it. So when we respond by calling ourselves activists, it's, okay, all these things are necessary. Protesting, I'm an activist, I'm going to Washington. Okay, you got to do all that. But the call to future generations right now, these younger people, that's what we're trying to help out with our nonprofit, you know, is to establish your own personal connection with the earth and bring back the memory of who you are as a human being. It's about having a connection and a sense of place. And we were designed as human beings to have a connection to sense of place through our senses. That's why we're given senses. But this is what I'm trying to say about rock climbing. Like it's such a beautiful, pure thing to do if your mind is going with that kind of awareness to say, you know, question, why am I doing this? What am I getting out of it? What is this rock here in front of me? What's that little plant over there? And come back to nature and come back to your senses and start approaching rock climbing as a way to know who you are and observe your ego. Because all the elements of a human being will come out. Because, you know, we know when we get strung out, especially on something very challenging, that was like magic line for me. You know, I had that sponsor Prana at the time, and they were so masterful at their little storytelling, you know, and being a sponsor. That was what's so interesting to start pre-contact. I'd like to say it like that, pre-industrial, whatever industry, because you had this freedom to flow, and we didn't even have ratings for the boulders back at camp, right? We do a boulder and we just name it Blue Suede Shoes or something, you know, because we had a tape deck. Jimi Hendrix could be playing. We're like, yeah, let's just call that Blue Suede Shoes. Okay. You know, no rating. And some kids I talked to from this private school or whatever they were, boarding school, they were pretty cool. And I said, don't ever disrespect that boulder because you think it's only a V3. You know, look at that boulder for what it is, and it's giving you some opportunity to enjoy moving on it. And they kind of caught them by surprise, you know, because there's so much influence, and that's because the story picked up, you know. So we want to get our story back somehow for the next generation. And again, this is back to your iPhone thing. I don't hate my iPhone. We're just trying to Aikido move the energy of our historical phenomena from past, present to future. Say, okay, well, we got to go through this part. That was interesting. Now let's come back to the basics and say, I need to know who I am as a human being more than ever at this time, because that's your biggest opportunity and responsibility for your personal life, is to know who you are. And when you know who you are, hopefully you will love yourself and you will feel good about yourself. And that will be your greatest contribution to this world, to be okay with yourself.
Well, let's talk more about the tangible things that we can all do. I want to circle back to something you've said a couple times, which is that you live very similarly to how you used to live in Camp 4. You're still living the same way. You spend a lot of time outside. And we've talked about this a bit before. I remember you talking about standing outside barefoot and just kind of like facing the sun as the sun comes up in the mornings. And yeah, we are all stressed. What are some of the simple things that you do to deeply relax? What would you love to see people do more often? You know, when they're out climbing or whatever.
Perfect.
You know?
Thanks for bringing that back around. Because, like I say, if it does run off the track a little bit linear, it'll take you too much in the mind. So one of the things that I recognize is we really, really need time in nature. And we need to take time to feel. How do we feel? And then when we get good at that, we might talk to someone else that we know about how we feel. And we're both talking to each other. How do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about that? And then we're really kind of getting a language going back that can come through a realm of communing and communicating. because I always felt that somehow, even originally, we needed to commune and communicate and then create a community. That's one of the phenomena of the losses of language throughout the world. So to get our ability to slow down enough, and I don't know that it has to be even, like I say, I'm not against yoga and all that stuff, but a lot of stuff, and that's back to capitalism, it'll be a trendy thing, like, because it came from India. It was about spirituality, and then over here we can kind of run it into where it doesn't really want to deal with the spirituality because there's not enough time. You got to get back on the freeway. So I'm not trying to disrespect that either, but I'm thinking in our case as rock climbers, we have that time because we're in nature to go sit quietly for a while. Does that make sense? I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's so unbelievably simple, but we need time. And one of the things that has been taken from us is our time. Things have speeded up, and there was people who said there'll be a time when people are so busy they won't really recognize what's happening. So it's not to necessarily have to go sit down and think about what a disaster we're living in. It's actually to come back to why I contacted you was I was having my personal experience with that those flowers, looking at Yosemite in the background with a certain kind of temperature, with a certain kind of breeze, with a certain sound of the waterfall and the distance. It was moving me so soulfully. And in those moments, you could feel like the richest person in the world because you're having that kind of human experience, which is our gift of being human, is to connect to a sense of place. So I think that one of the biggest things we need to understand is find a sense of place for yourself, go to that place and see what comes to you and start to develop that practice that is so simple that because we used to have this kind of time, right? When we were in our tribes, and we all were in tribes at one time, we had a lot of time to be together or just be peaceful in the rhythm of nature. So I think we need to find the rhythm of nature. And I think that's what yoga's idea was, or Yogananda coming over here, was to help the people learn to breathe. We're trying to learn how to breathe over here because it's so stressful. and all that, like, so it's like, okay. And so all this can benefit our climbing. This is the fun part of it. You learn to relax. You got nothing to lose. You're going to go, stay in harmony with yourself. And that's what I was saying about Magic Line. Until I let go of every trip about my sponsor, or this is going to be a 514 in Yosemite and whatever, I was dealing with in my own head, I had to let go of everything and think all I want to do is just try to make the next move. And that's when I made it. There was no fixation on the expectation of finishing the climb. It was, how did I feel in that particular move? And this is a humbling, I'm trying to talk sincerely and humbling here, because a lot of us, and we can all do it, we kind of mock each other or get that arrogant thing, or we resist. And I think with you and I, we're just trying to be open-minded, share some feelings and thoughts that could help us and help others. And I think ultimately that's what we're here to do too, is to help ourselves, to help others. I've heard that many times in our circles. And that's what we have to realize will be the call for the future generations, to get yourself in a good way so that you're promoting positivity and a new creative story for this maybe 2 generations down, because this could all turn around. We don't know how this is going to play itself out, right? But I'm pretty sure activating what some of us might call your spirit, maybe that's too heavy, right? But activate your true humanness to be what we call the helper, healer, mender, like to be here for that purpose. And I think when we all slow down enough, we would say, that makes sense. Maybe my purpose is to be here to help, heal, and mend a world that is completely falling apart and collapsing due to the lack of respect for nature, to dealing with greed and profit and over competitiveness and insecurities, and people want to play God and control the food, control the human being. That's insanity. So we need to come back to being sane. So the question we would all have to ask ourselves, what does that mean? And it's pretty obvious. We need to find a harmonious way with nature. Nature is our teacher, and nature needs to come back to teaching us who we are as human beings. We got to do it. It has to happen. So if that's too serious, okay, let's just back off and get back to what your question was. How can we deal with this? Go get yourself together and take time to think, who am I really? What is my higher purpose? And what is my vision for the next 10 years or so? Because right now we are at such a crux that we have to get some kind of shift of consciousness to think, and this is where it gets pretty powerful, because in our circles with and spiritual people, they understand there's an unseen world too. So sometimes that we live. Shoni Elder said to me once, "We need to work with the miracle of life," and I was like, "Man, that was a heavy thing to say." But in a way, I see that he's a spiritual man and he means what he's saying. So sometimes we hope for those miracles, and right now would be one of those times, right? So part of that, I think, phenomenon is when we really care and we really get ourselves together and we get rid of our insecurities to the best of our ability, our anger, our violence and all this stuff. We become the example. That's why that Gandhi was throwing it out there, become the change. These are things we really need to take serious in a good way. Just like we take how serious we want to make the hardest climb of our life. We take it so serious, and we should, because it's hard. You need to really apply yourself. So why don't we apply that same kind of commitment to bettering ourselves as a human being? Why wouldn't we do that? Because we don't have a reference for it, bro. There's not enough reference to what it means to be a good human being. And this is what we want to start working on within our circles and within the dialogue of what it means to be a rock climber, and how we can start with ourselves and make the world a better place. And would that be too, that makes sense to me. And I think that was a conversation that would be in Camp 4 without, it just was a natural particular time in the 70s, 60s, that there was a revolution to kind of challenge, who are we? What are we doing? Is it right to go kill people in Vietnam when we know it was all created, a false flag event? If we know our history, it keeps repeating itself, but the people kind of rose up at one time, and now we need to do it again. But it's a time where I think mainly we need to get back to being human. And I think our greatest gift would be to start with ourselves. And when you go out climbing next time, de-stress. you can really say, I don't want to be stressed at all, because I'm the most privileged person in the world right now to go into, learn from this rock, how to fit into it, how to be a part of my environment, and get a story going there that's going to raise our level across the board, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that.
And after all these years, bro, I could say, if climbing would give me anything, it gave me a lot of that to continue to be a student, a good student of life, and help myself to help others. And that's why I just loved walking up Yosemite Falls the other day with the kids, and just feel that mist coming off the falls on you when it's hot and it's not easy to walk up that trail, and then you sit up there and you get to have your little sandwich and you're just like, man, this is amazing. But it puts things in order. Like, the power of nature is the number one thing, especially here, it's in your face, right?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I feel like I feel pretty complete. How are you feeling? Do you feel like
I feel good.
We captured everything
to
that
have
you...
this kind of, yes. Just wanted to have a little flow with you, and for anyone else out there, that we can creatively keep connecting. Anybody that has ideas, you can contact sacredrock.org. ROK is how we spell rock. And I think we have so much potential to keep advancing ourselves in a very humble, respectful way. And I was not about trying to put anybody down, or maybe we can make little fun jokes, but it's not in a mean-spirited way. It's just to challenge ourselves to say, how can we start with ourselves and ripple it out into others, and get our power back to know that we really can make a difference, starting just to be okay, feel good about ourselves, and then share that goodness. And then the creativity will flow from there. That's where the creativity flows, and the naturalness of what this world is all about. That would be about love, right? So in a way, maybe this word love flows into it all, the love for life, the love for climbing, to love the earth, and put it in perspective. Like, it's a beautiful world, and we want to keep it beautiful. And the way we can participate is, understand the beauty of ourselves. I say that to the kids all the time. You see how beautiful that waterfall is? See yourself in that. And then I was at the spring the other day, and now I joke around, but I kind of mean it. There was a person came up and they were drinking the water right from the spring, and I was sitting on their side drinking water. I go, you drinking that water means we're spiritually connected. and she kind of laughed. She goes, I like that. And I go, well, it's true if you think about it. Like, the water is keeping us alive, all of us human beings. And how humbling is that? Like this world shaped itself to create water and we all need water, because you'll be done in some days without water our whole life. And these are the things that I think we've taken for granted, and why I say this is what normal sounds like, because it's become acceptable to maybe roll your eyes at someone like me that's trying to talk about water. Like, yeah, man, we know water, but do you? Because I don't think you're really going to know water until you sit up on the side of a hill without water for about 4 days. Then you will know water, and you will think to yourself, there's any crazy thing that I was all caught up in has no meaning to me now unless I can get a drink of water and continue my life. So that's perspective. And as climbers, we get the opportunity for perspective. So if we work together on our ability to get a strong story that's very common sense orientated, it's not trying to go extreme. And that's what our nonprofit's been about. We're not trying to go, we just take a real simple approach, and it's very deep, and it's power to help people remember who we are. So we're pretty excited about it. And I feel complete too. And I appreciate the time with you. And it's so, when I get those thoughts, and I'll hit you right out of the blue, like you say, and I'm thinking, I wonder how Steve will because even later I might come down a little bit, like I literally come back to tell him like, that's funny. But I think we need to be okay with that.
Yeah.
That's back to our creativity as humans. We get inspirational moments.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most beautiful things about us humans, is that we can be inspired and share it.
Well, I appreciate you so much, Ron, and I will just tell you that it always feels like such an honor to be someone that you would think of in those moments to send a message like that to. And it's really fun to be on the receiving end of them. And, at the start of the conversation, you said something like, "Oh, has it been a year? Like, I don't really know. What is time?" And I'm like,
yeah,
I really appreciate that about the connection that we have. I've still never met you face to face in the flesh, and yet it's been really special to have this connection where it doesn't feel like we have to say, "Oh, hey, how you been?" We could just get right to it, just pick up right where we left off, or just flow with that kind of a spark of inspiration that you had. So anyway,
I like that spark of inspiration that has the what would you call it? The desire to share. And this is all about good energy. So any listener out there, I hope you can feel a big bear hug from Yosemite, a great energy to support your next move, whatever you make, and that recognize we're making this move together, and then we can get stronger again with our mental, physical, spiritual health, and creatively contribute to this world. Again, start with our own self. Just next time you drink that water, just give a little thanks.
Beautiful.
All right, bro.
All right. Appreciate you, man.
Same here.
All right. See ya. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.